Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Kudlow. I'm David Asman, in for Larry Kudlow. Well, a deadly winter storm wreaked havoc across the U.S. over the weekend, leaving more than 60 people dead across 9 states. And officials say this number is expected to rise as search efforts continue. But the impact of the storm was felt all across the nation, with thousands of flight delays and cancellations during the busiest travel days of the year. Many utilities and grid operators were unprepared for the surge in demand, causing power plants to go offline, leaving thousands of Americans with nothing to heat their homes. Some of the deaths were caused by people freezing in homes without power. Now, power plant failures caused the Department of Energy to declare a grid emergency in Texas on Saturday, and there may be more to come. For more on all of this, let's bring in Rick Perry, former Energy Secretary and former Texas Governor. Secretary, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Hell of a storm. These things happen. They happen every year. This one was particularly bad. Now, thank God there wasn't a general collapse of our nation's electrical grid, but there were areas, pockets in which that happened. Should we be concerned?
Well, absolutely. And when you think about this storm versus some that we've had in the past, and some I'm sure we'll have in the future, this storm wasn't that intense. You think back to 1983, and we had a storm that kept Texas, the greater part of Texas, under freezing for weeks. And if we'd have had the same grid issue in this state at that particular point in time, we'd have had some truly horrific events. But we've been telling people, particularly in the Northeast for some time, that if you don't have a diverse portfolio of energy providers and baseload energy, and baseload comes basically from 2 places today, either natural gas or nuclear. And those 2 are on the bad boy list, if you will, by the climate folks. And so we're seeing plants being shut down, nuclear plants being shut down. We're not building the base load capacity in this country that we need. And if we're going to continue to rely upon wind and solar, the fact is it's just going to get worse and worse, and more people are going to die. Wind and solar have their place, don't get me wrong. But when you start relying upon them to the point that we are today and incentivizing, I tell the folks here in Texas, you get more of what you incentivize. If you want to have more of something, incentivize it. And there's a lot of different ways to incentivize the building of peaker plants with natural gas. But I think one of the real answers is on small modular reactors. This country ought to be deadly focused, if you will. I mean, just laser focused on small modular reactors. They're economical, they're walk-away safe, and by the way, there's 0 emissions.
And you know, the flip side of what you say about incentivizing is if you want less of something, you tax it or you regulate it. And we're doing both of those things. And in the case of states like New York, they have banned fracking outright. They have just banned it. In 2020, they did that. They're doubling down on it now. And of course, they're refusing to grant new pipelines to come into the state. So that's got to affect things. And particularly as this nation is trying to electrify more. They're trying to electrify the whole car fleet. They're trying to electrify heating in homes as opposed to oil and gas burners. So it's going in exactly the wrong direction.
Well, it is. And I think we as citizens have to stand up and say, listen, we get it. We understand the desire to move away from fossil fuels, but we don't agree with it. And I think it's up to us to be wise about educating the public about that fossil fuels actually are very good for the country. They're good for the world. They're good for the quality of life that people can have, and to not be afraid of that, not let the climate alarmists go out there and drive us so far away from reality that we start seeing more and more of these events occur. And not just Americans, but people all around the world literally dying because of decisions that are made that are not grounded in science.
Well, you know, and it seems like they're just not using common sense. If they want to electrify more, they have to find ways of powering those electrical grids that they have. And they're not thinking about this. They're not realizing that the windmills and the solar are not going to cut it, that you need some fossil fuels for more electricity. By the way, the Wall Street Journal had a piece today about what happened over the weekend. It said the climate lobby wants to force all homes and buildings to shift to electric heating, even though it is less efficient than gas furnaces in frigid weather. Now, first, the electric baseboard heating is nowhere near, I don't know if you've ever lived in a house, I have, that had electric baseboard heating. It's nowhere near as efficient as gas or oil heaters that are pumped through with the air systems. But you know, our electric grid is actually overworked as it is. If you get all home heating provided by electricity, it simply can't handle it, can it?
David, I think it's really important for particularly the American people to educate themselves about what reality is and what truth is. I highly recommend that people get a book
Alex
called
Epstein.
Alex Epstein, to read this, because it's based in science, it's thoughtful, and it basically says that fossil fuels are not the end of the world. Actually, they're very good for the world, and to help people get out of poverty in third world countries, for instance. If we don't have fossil fuels to use and the engines that the fossil fuels drive, you can't irrigate their land. You can't, I mean, it's stunning how wrong the environmental lobby has this, yes, and how all too often Americans have just followed them like lemmings down this road. We need to get smart about this. We need to be thoughtful about this and stand up and say, you know what, fossil fuels that America has an abundance of can be the real savior of the world.
But you know, what happens is every time reality slaps these people in the face and says, look, what you're doing is wrong, doesn't make sense, you're going in the wrong direction, they come up with another excuse, another layer of the whole climate change argument. Bjorn Lomborg, who we love here, he put out a tweet over the weekend saying the Bloomberg News Service is now pushing climate misinformation. No, you can't blame everything on climate, including extreme cold, because they had a piece saying that the extreme cold was caused by climate change, by climate warming. Such claims simply jettison climate science. With more global warming, you get, not surprisingly, you get more heat, less cold. I mean, they're actually flipping the old "it's getting warmer" by saying that the cold is because somehow it's getting warmer. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, Americans really need to take a step back and be thoughtful about this issue of the climate. Again, I go back to Epstein's book is just a stunningly good read. If you care about the climate, if you care about the future of the country, if you care about the economy, if you care about people's lives, highly recommend you read this book and get a good education about what's happening out there dealing with fossil fuels.
By the way, just to give people a blast from the past, I know you and I probably would remember this. Some of our audience probably won't. But there was an actor named Leonard Nimoy, who was of Star Trek fame, and he came out with a documentary. He was a lead man of a documentary about climate cooling. Let me just play that just to show you how things have changed. Roll tape.
What scientists are telling us now is that the threat of an ice age is not as remote as they once thought. During the lifetime of our grandchildren, Arctic cold and perpetual snow could turn most of the inhabitable portions of our planet into a polar desert.
I mean, it's wild the way things have changed, and you wonder what the next iteration of the climate change warriors is going to be.
You might want to listen to Dr. Spock.
Dr. Spock usually knew what was right. By the way, we should emphasize, all joking aside, cold weather kills 9 times more folks every year than hot weather. That's about 4,600,000 people a year die from cold weather incidents than from hot weather incidents, and that has to be reckoned with when you're thinking about climate change as well. Rick Perry, always wonderful to see you. Have a wonderful new year. I hope you had a good Christmas. Thanks for being here.
Back to you. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. Thank you, sir.